Hello and welcome to Breakfast for Pancakes. I'm your host, PK Sullivan. I'm getting ahead of the season a little bit, going to show you how to make an amazing, simple summer pasta salad. Stick around. Ingredients: pasta, tomatoes, olive oil, salt, mozzarella cheese, balsamic vinegar, black pepper, basil. This recipe starts on the stove. There's very little knife work needed. In fact, you could avoid using a knife entirely if you wanted to. I'll cover that in a little bit. Fill a 5-quart pot with water and set it to boil. While that comes up to temperature, add your tomatoes and oil to a 12-inch skillet, then turn the heat to medium-low. Add a pinch of salt. Stir occasionally. Don't use a pan that needs to be seasoned for this. The tomatoes are going to cook for a while and the acid can strip away the seasoning. Enameled cast iron, a nonstick pan, or a stainless steel pan are all fine. Grape or cherry tomatoes work. Really, they should just be small and bite-sized. These are grape tomatoes, and I'll admit they don't look the ripest. It's early March and I'm in Chicago. What are you gonna do? Cook the tomatoes gently over medium to medium-low heat so that they warm up slowly and don't char. You want to preserve the brightness of the fresh tomatoes. The end goal is to create a thick, luscious sauce from the olive oil and juice that gets released as the tomatoes burst. The juice cooks down a bit in the pan, and when it gets tossed with the pasta, it picks up starch from the surface. This gives you a sauce that clings to the pasta like a cheap soup. Once the water is boiling, add a bunch of salt and the pasta. Cook it until al dente using the instructions on the package as a guide. I'm using penne for this video, but rotini or cascatelli, those would both work too. Find a pasta that you love. I really want to try cascatelli, but I haven't been able to get a hold of any. It's not every decade a new pasta shape enters the market, and it's sold out everywhere. Oh, and remember to stir your pasta occasionally so it doesn't stick to the bottom of the pot. Make sure to stir the tomatoes once in a while too. Mix them up to avoid hot spots in the pan and encourage even cooking. As the tomatoes burst and release their juices, adjust the heat so the sauce simmers but doesn't boil. You don't want the sugars from the tomatoes to burn and stick to the pan. Once it looks like all the tomatoes have cooked enough to give up their juice, remove the pan from the heat. I rearrange my stovetop so the pasta is closer to the sink, as I'll be draining it in a few minutes. When your pasta is done cooking, drain the water and rinse the pasta with some cool water to stop the cooking. Add the pasta to the pan with tomatoes and toss to coat. This needs to cool to room temperature before we continue, so let's move to the cutting board to talk about cheese. Before I start chopping up mozzarella, I'm going to use just a quick note on the kind of mozzarella you can choose to use. I'm going to use a block of fresh mozzarella that I'm going to chop up myself. The reason being is mozzarella has a smooth skin. That skin is perfectly fine, normal, it's natural, it's part of mozzarella. However, the inside of the mozzarella is much more textured and grippy and porous. The outside skin is slick and smooth and slippery, and things don't grab onto it. For this recipe, because it's a pasta salad, because you want the sauce to sort of coat everything and grip onto it, I like to use a block of mozzarella that I chop up myself. Don't use a low moisture mozzarella. You want to use a full moisture fresh mozzarella for this recipe. If you don't have the time or you just don't want to spend time chopping up little cubes of mozzarella, you can get mozzarella pearls. These are great. You'll find these in a lot of salad recipes. They're wonderful, they're delicious. Fresh mozzarella. They all have that outer skin, so the sauce here just sort of slides off of them. They don't soak it up, they don't really meld with the rest of the dish. It works just fine. It's that tiny little incremental piece of this is good to, oh, this is a little special, this is a little different, a little bit better. So that's why I like using the block. But if you're in a pinch, or even you just don't want to bother, mozzarella pearls work just fine. Chop up the mozzarella. You don't need to be too precise, just keep it to nice bite sizes, and it'll be fine. Once the mozzarella is all chopped up and the cooked ingredients have cooled to room temperature, mix them together. This is your best chance to really coat the mozzarella, so mix thoroughly. Pasta salad is a quintessential potluck dish, and Bonus points, this one can be made up to a few days ahead of time. Just pack it up at this point. You can finish it once you get to the party. You can use a 9x13 baking dish, but I have a gallon Cambro that I like because it has a smaller footprint in the fridge. And like a lot of different pastas, this pasta salad gets better after a few days. There are a couple of fresh ingredients, we'll get to those in a second. The finishing touches on this pasta salad are the 3 B's: basil, balsamic, and black pepper. I like to chiffonade the basil, but if you don't want to, that's fine. You can tear it into pieces with your hands. If you tear the basil and use mozzarella pearls, this recipe doesn't even need a knife. This is a dish best served at room temperature. The tomatoes have a bad texture if they're too cold, and the flavors get muted. If it's served hot, the cheese melts. Room temperature is that Goldilocks zone. Again, makes it a great dish to bring to a party. Crack some black pepper and make a generous addition of basil. Lastly, drizzle a bit of balsamic vinegar on top. This stuff is potent, thick, syrupy sweet, and with a real acidic kick, so just a little bit will do. When serving at a party, I add all of these and toss them just to combine right before serving. And now we're ready to dig in. This is a pasta dish for people who love classic Italian cuisine. The mix of tomato, mozzarella, and basil is iconic. It's both the Caprese and the margherita. Here that trio shines in a pasta dish meant to be shared. The tomatoes are sweet and bright. The mozzarella is cool and creamy. That first bite is filled with the aroma of basil, the smell of a spring garden. The sauce created by the oil and tomatoes clings to the pasta and cheese, rather than pooling at the bottom of the dish. The zing of the balsamic and floral pepper add depth and complexity when you find them. This is simple, Italian-inspired cooking at its finest. A few simple ingredients, treated with respect, and large enough to feed a crowd. Delicioso. Thank you for watching. I always appreciate anything you can do to help me out, including watching, liking, subscribing, sharing links to the videos, telling your friends. Breakfast for Pancakes does release a new episode every Tuesday. I'm working hard to actually increase that rate so that more content is being released on the channel on a regular basis. If you have a suggestion for something you'd like to see me make, please let me know down in the comments. I do have a Patreon, so if you would like to help the channel monetarily, you can do so by following the link down in the description. I'll see you next week.